Without further ado, let's start with a presentation of our amazing experts today. We have Mathieu Dumont, Head of Product at WorkLeap, Kiara Graham, Talent Management Specialist at WorkLeap, and Trent Cudden, which is joining us this morning, VP of Talent and Culture at Hatchworks. Mathieu, do you want to start with a quick presentation?
Yeah, sure thing. My name is Matt. I'm the product director of WorkLeap LMS, been in the L&D, building businesses also sector for nearly a decade. So I wake up every morning to fix or bridge the gap between learning and business performances. So I'm very happy to be here today to talk about this subject.
Thank you. We're happy to have you. Kiara, do you want to do a short introduction for the audience?
Sure. So I'm Kiara. I am working in talent management and organizational development right now at WorkLeap. I've been working in L&D and ed tech for the past 10 years. So definitely the intersection of HR, technology, and learning is my area of interest.
Thank you. Thank you. For those who are regular at our WorkLeap events, Mathieu and Kiara did an awesome presentation back in May around creating a culture of learning for live summit about moments that matter. So we're excited that the both of them are back together for this dynamic duo this morning. And then Trent, last but not least, do you want to do a short introduction for the audience?
Sure thing. So I feel like the dumb one on the panel after those introductions. Trent Cotton, I'm the Vice President of Hatchworks AI for talent and culture. So everything from acquisition to performance enhancement, development, all the fun stuff of HR, as I like to put it. I've been in HR for 20 years and actually got into HR coming from the line of business because I really hated working with HR people and thought that I could fix it. And it's 20 years later and I am still trying.
Love the intro. I think you're getting close. You're getting pretty close.
I
So
don't know. I don't
let's
know.
let's hope we help a little bit with that today. All right, without further ado, let's jump in the panel. Haven't discussed the theme of the panel today, so before we jump in, today we're gonna discuss alignment and growth, two topics which are really important for HR professional right now. A lot of challenges around engagement and growth. But before we get into the topic, why are we exactly discussing that today? Well, Trent found a few interesting stats on the benefits of growth and alignment in an organization. So let's start with that. In organization where there is alignment between employee and organizational growth, there is on average a 30% increase in organizational growth, a 60% increase in employer brand, 50% increase in quality of hire, so therefore better employee retention, of 25%. So a lot of very impressive numbers. If you weren't convinced on the importance of aligning growth with strategy, I think we just showed it. So without further ado, let's get in the topic. We have a first question for our experts this morning. So as a generic question to really open the floor, how should HR professional approach organization culture as a business grows?
I can jump in if you like to
Yeah.
on this one.
Yes.
One thing that I think so many people get caught up in is that the culture that you start the company with is going to be the culture 10 years from now. It needs to ebb and flow. It needs to grow with the organization. And it makes sense because as the organization grows, you're bringing in new people, new talent, new perspectives, and hopefully diversity of thought. So if you're doing all of that, then the culture should evolve with the company to be able to meet the needs of the changing client base. I mean, all of us, just look at the last 2 years, just with the influx of AI, how many companies have had kind of been turned on their head. Having a culture of, this is the type of technology that we're going to use going forward. If you stick to that, then you're not going to be around in several years.
Mhm.
The HR professionals focusing on culture sometimes with your business leaders, they can see it as being touchy-feely. That's why I like the fact that you started out with some really good, strong stats. I mean, each one of those four stats that you gave, that translates to profit that translates to equity. I think that whenever you're relating the culture, it's not just how are our employees feeling, but relating that to the more engaged they are, the more productive that they're going to be. So at Hatchworks AI, I meet with the executive team. We have a monthly, I can never say this word, monthly culture work session. So I pull in the survey data from our employee base and we look at what's going well and what's not. And we try to find the things that are going well. How do we scale that? How do we do double down on that? And then the things that are maybe not going so well, really trying to figure out how can we work and be able to provide solutions, kind of taking that product approach for employee engagement and employee culture. What products or solutions can we offer our employees to be able to help with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And I feel like Trent, you share like the importance of statistics and like relating like business outcomes with culture. I feel like that's also a challenge sometimes for HR professionals in order to like have a seat at the table and like be able to justify your
Hmm.
HR initiative, right? Being able to
Right.
link them with like clear indicators that benefit the
Right.
business.
So, I mean, you got to be able to speak the language of business,
Mm-hmm.
and business is numbers. So, equating it to those key drivers or those KPIs that the organization is trying to hit, you're going to get a lot further along and get
Mm-hmm.
a lot more buy-in from that. There's a quote by William, actually two by William Denning that I love. It's "In God we trust, and everyone else must bring data." Is the first one, and the second one is if you don't have data, you're just another person with an opinion. And so that's kind of the bar that
Yeah.
I hold myself to whenever I'm trying to work with my peers on something as intangible sometimes as culture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Mathieu, do you have
And
something to add? Yeah.
well, yeah, I wanted to piggyback as I mean, obviously this really resonates to me, like having own businesses, having like I'm a really people oriented like business builders, so always making sure that growth is the centerpiece of the business because at the end of the day, it's all about people, processes, and the product, but mainly the people who are going to be driving innovation, driving the quality of execution, and therefore the value to the customer, which becomes the profit to the business. So having that ability to tie in the people strategies to the actual business performance metrics is key, and something that oftentimes there's still a gap in the language as we speak, or that conflicting interest that we need to kind of find a common ground to build between executives and the HR leaders. I like, Trent, the fact that you've mentioned the notion of like just an evolving culture. Like to me, there's no such thing as a bad or a good culture. There's just the culture that either we're honest on or the culture we're trying to push, but that isn't really perceived or felt by the employees. Like just to state as an example, like I could never work in a construction industry because of how rough and tough it is. But like if people are in agreement with that culture, to me, I could say it's a toxic culture, but to them, it's fine. That's what they like. So it's all about finding that mutual agreement with the employees and the business stakeholders and the business needs to align where are we at our stage of our business, what kind of people do we need, and what's the culture we need to foster and create to support that alignment. From there on, it also means that you got to be aware of those maybe legacy or veterans employees that are clinging to the culture of past days that could become detractors and holding you back from progress. So it's a constant evolving thing that is not easy to balance out, but it all starts by, like I said, having that mutual agreement on what is the business need, what's the supporting culture, and what's the right people to thrive in that environment. Because your culture is always going to be challenged by employees, be it the ones that are aligned or that are not. So you gotta really be honest with yourself with what the business needs are.
Mm-hmm. And to tie it with the stats we shared at the beginning, like when you're honest about your culture and it's clear, it makes the hiring process that more effective too, because like you're gonna attract the right people that fit your culture and help them reach your organization goals, right?
Exactly, and that's kind of where oftentimes the disrupt is between the employer brand from the external perspective, and then you hire that person, and then we sold that person
Mm-hmm.
something completely different because we're not being honest with the culture. We make it look good, but as soon as you start in, yeah, the culture is different from what we're like the culture and the brand are two different things, but they should be aligned and mirrored to one another. So yes, there has to be continuity from the hiring process on how do we attract those people, but also how do we make sure that they're engaged and stay with us for as long as they can, so long as that alignment supports the business interests.
Yeah, I saw so many example of like fellow like friends who saw like a work offer and it's like it's fully hybrid, no need to come into the office. And then when you get to your first day, it's like, oh well, actually at least 1 or 2 days in the office would be preferred. It's not forced, but like it's strongly encouraged. That's like the kind of gaps between like what you showcase as your culture and like what actually is true, right? And that's like a really bad way to start an employee experience. And you start with an employee that felt a bit deceived, right?
Absolutely.
Well, it's kind of like, if you pay to go on this great all-inclusive resort for a vacation, and you were just looking forward to it. The last week at work, I don't know about maybe this is just maybe the last week of work before a vacation always makes me really look forward to the vacation because it's like, oh, you're going to be out a week. Let's compound 80 hours into the 40 or 45 hours in the week before. So imagine, all of this expectation. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be wined and done. I'm going to have people waiting on me. And you get there and it looks like a hostel. That's what happens a lot of times whenever candidates fall in love with the brand, but then they come in and the culture is so much the antithesis of what the brand is. So I agree with Matthew 100%. Make sure that they're as closely aligned as possible. Actually, I think your brand should feed off of your culture.
Mm-hmm.
And some people like to travel in hustles too. So if you're just being honest from the jump
Oh yeah,
about what it
it's
is, like
totally,
you're gonna
it's
try
whatever you
the right
want.
people who like hustles. Like that's the
Yeah.
name of the
So
game.
everybody now knows that Matthew and I travel in different places. A hostel would make me very, very anxious, but everybody has their own thing. And there are some cultures that are you got to have grit, you got to get after it, you got to, the startup culture, people thrive on that. Other people thrive on working in larger organizations where there's a process, there's an SOP. So you got to find the flavor that works best for you.
Mm-hmm. Yep, totally agree. Which I think lead us to our second question of the panel, which is in terms of like strategies and concrete example you can implement at your organization, what strategies can HR implement to identify and develop talents that align with your future needs once you identify where you want to go as a business? Mathieu, do you want to start with this one?
Sure thing, because to me, it's going back to basics, and I think we're not good with basics. You
Mm-hmm.
can't expect people to align and or even grow an interest in the business future needs if they don't know about it. Oftentimes, that kind of level of information, like the long-term vision, strategies, growth plans, they're spoken at the like in the ivory tower, like exec level, but it's never really communicated or articulated in a way that's accessible to the individual contributors. Because oftentimes, let's talk about EBITDA and all of those like verbiage that's specific to stakeholders, but it's not really telling, oh, hey, I currently am sitting in XYZ position. I have these roles and responsibilities, but I also have all of these untapped talents and or interest areas that, hey, I just don't have the opportunity to leverage. And if I would know clearly that this is something that the business is looking to grow, because in 3 years from now, we want to be there, I would be happy to be a hand raiser and try to push toward that direction, maybe even become proactive on enabling the business and like putting more depth in that skill set because it aligns with what's in it for me. So alignment is obviously going to be a big theme, but to me, growth happens in the performance gaps of the business because that's what the business will prioritize. So if you can align an individual contributors and like organic growth opportunities, interests, or talents, and things that will equally benefit that person, the team, and the business, that's how you're actually building a strong culture, a culture of continuous development, a culture of adaptation. And that's how the business is putting itself afterwards in a position to reap those rewards. So communication, I think, is something that's clearly overlooked. And also the learning marketing. So on the flip side, a lot of businesses stakeholders will say, well, we're doing all of these training activities and there's low participation. It's like, yeah, but you didn't market it. You market it, you've pushed it down in the words that speak to what benefits the business, but you did not make it clear why is it of interest for that employee to get self-motivated to do it. If you can position growth opportunities in a way that it's clear what's in it for them, and it just so happens that it overlaps with the business needs, if people are part of the plan, they're not going to fight it. That's what I believe in.
Kiara, I'd love to have your take on that as a learning specialist at Workleap. I'm sure you've been part of many different learning programs and strategies.
Yeah, and I think probably because I come from that L&D background, that I think sometimes instead of focusing or trying to predict like what are the specific skills that we're going to need in the future, which can be really difficult because skills and technologies are changing so quickly that it's sometimes not possible to know what's going to come in the next couple of years or where we're going to be or how we're going to need to adapt. So I think one of the things I think is more useful to focus on is developing a learning mindset in our people. I like to call it learnability, and developing that across the organization recognizes that no matter what skills we're going to need in the future, what we need down the line, our people will be able to rise to the challenge of acquiring them because they have this mindset, this learnability to be able to learn new skills, no matter what those skills end up being. And when I think about like concrete things that HR can be doing now to cultivate that mindset, I think one of the biggest ones is hiring for that mindset. And I think that comes with looking beyond just like what are the specific skills that somebody has today that they're bringing to the table, but also prioritizing in our hiring process things like curiosity and adaptability and that willingness to learn, because those traits in my mind are better predictors of long-term success for a new hire than having the exact right technical skill set today. I also think, once people are in our company, it's great to hire people who want to learn, but we also now need to enable them to learn once they're in the company and in the job. So thinking about how do we prioritize or reward learning or that behavior that we want people to have around learnability. And I think one of my favorite ways to do that is incorporating learning and development goals into our performance management process. So thinking about not just like what specific performance targets do we want people to hit, but what do we want them to be learning along the way, and ensuring that we have that built in so people are, again, constantly encouraged to grow and develop as they go. Because I think that, emphasizing learnability, integrating it into our talent strategy, that's how we make sure that our workforce is adaptable, is future ready, regardless of what specific skills people end up needing down the road.
And because business needs change fast, right? And sometimes it's hard to predict like, let's say we might want to hire a video producer because we want to do more videos in the short term, but that can change quickly and like we have to be ready to move and be quick on our feet, right? Mathieu, do you have something to bounce on that?
Yeah, one of the things that's an observation. Like there's no stats behind it or whatnot, but one of the things I think we're taking for granted, people are coming from different backgrounds, different like experiences, and I think too often we assume that people know how to learn. Learning in itself is a skill. Like in the same way we often see customers would build, let's say, train the trainer courses as they get the LMS to empower more of the subject matter experts to know how to teach and pass down their knowledge. I think there's a missing piece here of, hey, let's make sure that like all of our people know actually how to learn. There are strategies to increase information retention and just like how to break down your learning experiences based on your proficiency to just like stay focused for a certain period and stuff like that. So I think like basically leveling everybody on day one on, okay, how do we learn here at company ABC? What's our business expectation towards you to continuously grow? Because it's a shared agreement. A business has to set the foundation and the environment for an employee to continuously grow. But if that person isn't engaged in its own self-growth, then it's kind of already bound to fail because it's not a mutual agreement. And that person is it by design because, hey, he doesn't understand what's needed of him. He's not aligned with the business. He doesn't know how to learn, so doesn't feel as engaged. So yeah, I think we are taking too much for granted that people know how to learn because it sounds basic, but there's a lot. I mean, there's levels to this.
It's empowering too, right? As an employee to be part of your own growth process. And like for me, it's a huge driver of engagement to like feel like you have control over like where you're
But
gonna
it's
go.
okay if people don't know how, like,
Yeah.
we can't expect people to have a full, like a complete understanding of where they want to grow. Like
Mhm.
just on my team, I have one person, like every single one on one. How do I grow? He's like, I don't know. So I'm gonna make suggestions as a manager, but depending on the audience of that person's profile, like, is he a really career oriented, like
Mhm.
just someone who's happy go lucky, happy to be there and help? So you need to kind of adapt your management style on that profile to either take a step back and let that person lead the growth conversation or be more on the offense and make suggestion based on what you're acknowledging as strengths and talents from that specific person who might not be self-aware of those talents.
Mhm. And just gonna bounce on that, I see there's like a really good question in the chat by Stacy. Kiara and Trent, you already answered it briefly, but the question is, are the learning goals to be determined by the employee or a manager? I think from your answer, it's a bit of both, right? It's a collaborative effort. Do you think the HR and learning team also plays in goal setting, or is it more in the enablement and empowerment about like how to help employees reach their goals? Whoever wants to take this question, go ahead.
Well, I think Mathieu kind of tackled this one in his last answer of it needs to be very collaborative.
Mhm.
And I agree that there are some people that just really enjoy learning. So you don't have to wind them up or anything. All you have to do is just say, here are all the different courses and things, and they're, going after it because that's where they get their energy. But other people need to be prodded along. But even for those that have that immense energy in learning, as a leader, you have to also help them be able to allocate their time correctly. What's going to benefit them the most? And so, in my one-on-ones, the beginning of every year and throughout the year, I go, where do you want to be? Paint a picture for me. What's that perfect job look like? And then from there, we get into the skill-based questions of, okay, do you have that skill set? Where could we get that skill set? Is it through exposure, meaning maybe I can get you to work on a project alongside someone and attain this knowledge kind of like on the job training? Or is there a LinkedIn course, Coursera? Or is it something that we actually need to go and pay for you to get a formal education in? But I do think that it needs to be conversational and bi-directional in order for it to be effective. And that might just be me. If you give me a learning plan that you think I should do, that's probably the worst thing because I'm just not going to do it. I want to have some kind of say so in it.
Agree. And I think that takes us also to our third question of the panel. We touch a bit on learning and like continuous. So like, what would you say is the role that continuous learning and development play to prepare talent in future growth of your organization? Mathieu, you want to start with this one?
Yeah, sure. So talents is scarce, good talents even more so. So by building a business model where you can afford to hire greener junior employees, you're setting yourself in a position where you're not overpaying someone who may be underqualified or have bad habits of the past. Obviously, it implies that you're investing more in training and more in continuous education to get things started. But it's the classic, like, you have to just get one turn of the wheel and then it sets everything in motion. So for all of the previous businesses I've had, I was always trying to put myself in a position where, hey, how do I get those diamonds in the rough? And it's on me to grow them based on the business needs and just behavior expectation and based on also the stage of where I'm at in my business, rather than overpay someone, like I said, who I'm not going to use all of the skill set that he's collected over 10, 15 years of experience. So, future-proofing your business implies to me that continuous training is one of the bedrock that you need to set in place, first and foremost.
Mm-hmm. Kiara, do you want to continue on this?
Yeah, I think, like I was saying, that aspect of learning is how we equip our people to adapt and rise to new challenges, and it's how we make sure that our business is agile and adaptable in the face of, things changing really rapidly. And I think having that kind of a culture of continuous learning does more than just upskill people. It actually helps to build resilience and confidence in people in the face of change, right? Because if people believe that they can adapt and they can learn and they can rise to that challenge, that helps our people to be more resilient and better able to adapt to change when it comes. And when learning is ingrained in our business as a core value, people are more likely to take initiative and experiment and try new things in real world situations. And I mean, that's the foundation of innovation in any business, right? So having that kind of a culture encourages those kinds of behaviors in people. And that kind of a shift in mindset, I think, helps to change the focus from reacting to change to actually proactively driving it. And that's how your organization becomes a leader, as opposed to someone who's constantly reacting to what's happening in the market or what's happening in the world. And I also think that having continuous learning in our organization embedded in the way we work and how we develop our people also helps people to take ownership of their career paths, which, Trent already mentioned. That's, I think, really crucial. And Mathieu talked about the alignment issue between making sure that people's self-motivation is aligned with where our business is going. And when people have access to ongoing learning, they can close their skill gaps and they can prepare themselves for future roles, making sure that they are growing alongside the organization. So for those of us in HR, that means aligning our L&D programs, aligning our initiatives with our long-term business goals so that the growth of our people is directly contributing to the growth of our company.
Preach. That was so good. Nothing to add on this answer. You hit the nail right on the head. I saw Mathieu also in the chat. You mentioned asking your employees or team members a question. When you leave us, where would you like to go to help reverse engineering the process of learning? I think that's really good. I'd like to share that with the audience. I see a lot of activity in the chat, by the way, everyone. Keep it going. I always see you're like the fifth member of this panel, and you're doing a great job today. So keep the question going. I love the engagement. Trent, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, we started the whole panel with how can HR position culture and organizational growth and all of that. And Kiara did a fantastic just kind of laying this up of, you need to be kind of working very, very closely. I think that's where you can bring in some credibility. Matthew's question to his employees, I've never thought about asking that to my team members, but I do ask that a lot for our executive leaders. Whenever I have one-on-ones with them and say, okay, in 1 year, what does our workforce need to look like? What skills do they need to have? And then reverse engineering, okay, well, in the next 90 days, if I want to completely transform my workforce to be like just the AI technologist of the future, I need to start today and I start working with them. So that way it's not the market is forcing my hand and I'm trying to do triage in the middle of a battlefield and create a learning and development plan. I'd rather do it as the market changes. So when the market does shift and go, we need 150 AI technologists, fantastic. Here they are. We're good, because I'm already going to be looking at what's going to be needed in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and making our people ready to go. And that helps and goes a long way with retention. So last year we had 98.5 retention as a consulting agency. It's unheard of, but it's because we invest so much in the training and development of our employees.
But the
Kudos
upside,
to the answer, Kiara. You completely just shot up everything I was going to say. You beat me to the punch. But you were a lot more eloquent at it.
The upside, because I like the fact that you're asking it to your executive management team, but the upside to asking it to an IC is that also is going to give you signals of those eventually, like, this question is, to me, it's just like, it is golden, because we know people are changing jobs now on average every 3 years. So to me, I'd much rather go day one in the expectation than, hey, this isn't going to last forever. Let's make the most out of it while you're here. But the sooner I can have signals that, hey, we're starting to grow apart here, the faster I can either lean in hard on bringing you back, or lean hard on, okay, let's fast track you to that next job because what you want and need to get there is no longer aligned with me. So it's preventing me from making unnecessary investments, thinking you're gonna stay, and then last minute you're ditching. Because culture, like I said, is always being challenged, always evolving. So how do you always make sure that you have the right people at like every single position, always aligned, and it's always about like that honest conversation. Let's not beat around the bushes. This isn't a marriage. Like we're gonna grow apart at some point, most likely. Hopefully not, but most likely. So how do we best know when it's time to set for that succession planning, to have lots of time to document what your successor will need to know and be proactive and not reactive?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's funny. I had a leader whenever I started working for, I call her mom because I'm closer to her than I am my parents. But you know, you always have those leaders that just make an imprint on your life, and Sibylla was definitely one of those. So she took over my division, and she went from being an internal client to now my boss. And so I was like, oh, this is going to be great. But she did an onboarding session with all of us on the team, even though she knew us. And she says, look, my job as a leader is twofold. One is to make you uncomfortable in your position, because two, that's going to force you to learn and grow. And she made good on that. I mean, she was the only time in my career that I ever went to her and said, this project is, I was halfway in and I can't do this. She goes, yes, you can. Like, but this isn't, she goes, you're so used to winning easily. I'm going to make you work for this win. And I am so glad she did it because I learned so much about the areas that I needed to grow and open myself up, to her and said, I'm really not good at this. Can you help me with this? So I think, if you're a leader, having that environment, I mean, my team knows as soon as they get comfortable, I'm moving them. I'm going to change what they're recruiting for. I'm going to change the process because that's what keeps the brain going. And that's what keeps people engaged. And that's what keeps them moving into that next position. There is no greater joy for me as a leader to see that Laurent worked on my team for 4 years. And now Laurent is running an organization at or equal to the size that I am. To me, that is the greatest compliment. And so my job every day is to make sure that I am putting my team members organizationally in a position to be able to do that.
Loving it.
Mm-hmm. I love it too. I think I'm gonna skip to the next question because like we're already in the example and strategy. I just want to keep that train of thought going, and I know that it's also the example that the audience you usually really enjoy seeing, like concrete stories. So I'm gonna skip to the other question, which is pretty simple. Can you share examples of program and or initiative that have helped bridge the gap between career goals and organizational targets? Trent, you mentioned quickly AI experts. Do you want to go a bit deeper on this?
Yeah. So just a little history about Hatchworks. We were a software development company. We've worked with very large clients building digital solutions for them from discovery to deployment. So very heavy in software delivery and product management. Beginning part of this year, we started seeing the tea leaves of, hey, a lot of stuff is going into AI. So we wanted to get ahead of that wave, which is great. It's exciting. I love the fact that we've got AI in our name. But the leaders and I sat down and said, okay, well, we've only got 3 or 4 people who are actually true AI technologists. How do we fix this? And so like I am in the weeds right now with our CTO and creating an internal AI university. And we're setting it up almost like karate or something like that, where you get different belts. So it's the base is very long about AI. Here's the general stuff about AI. Here's generally how businesses will be able to answer needs in the future, leveraging AI resources. But then as you get within your discipline, it gets a little bit more finite. It gets into, all right, you've learned about AI, you're a software developer. Here are some of the tools that we use. Here's why we use it. Here's how to maximize it. But then we also are going to go across and say, you're great at software development. AI is going to increase your efficiency to where it may open up 40% of your day because it's doing a lot of the basic coding and stuff for you. Let's teach you a little bit about product management so that way you can become that consultant. Let's teach you little bit about QA, so that way you can go ahead and start spot checking some of this stuff. So it's exciting, but it's also one of those tasks that it's kind of like whenever my daughter was a teenager, sometimes I would open her room and it looked like a bomb went off. And so I go, I want to clean it. But then I go, do I start here? Do I start there? And what did I do? My brain shut down. I just shut the door and I went back downstairs. I'm like, I don't have to look at it because it was like I didn't know where to start. And thank God, I have peers that are very knowledgeable in this. We got a CTO that's very passionate about educating everyone in AI and the power that it can do. So I have great partners in that. But that is a conversation that we had probably middle of last year of looking forward and saying this is where we're going as an industry. How do we get ahead of it? So we've been working on it for a long period of time. And the really exciting thing for us is that once we do that with our organization, we've got a philanthropic arm called Hatch Futures. And what we do is we go into educational units, and we're going to begin teaching teachers how to teach their kids to use AI, everything from tutorials to resume to interview questions to research, how to use it ethically and efficiently. So that way we're training that next level of technologists that's maybe right now in seventh or eighth grade down in Colombia. By the time they graduate, our hope is that they are the AI technologists, and it helps break that cycle of poverty. So that's kind of two different avenues that we're going down, educating internally, but then also to having an eyesight or foresight looking into our community and go, how do we lift up the community as well? I'm a little excited about it if you couldn't tell.
That's awesome. And like, have you, in terms of like the internal learning, have you already been able to witness some early signals of
Oh
AI
yeah.
maturity growing at your org? Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to our LinkedIn page, you'll actually see some of our employees leading webinars on large language models and a whole bunch of other stuff that I don't understand yet because I'm going to go through the university myself. But to me, that's really interesting because you're so used to seeing like, the heads of product or kind of this. I mean, these are straight line people that are dealing with our client projects that are out there leading that thought leadership of this is how you can create an action plan for a solution that normally would take about 3 days. Here's how you can do it in about 12 hours leveraging AI. And they
Mhm.
go through it and share their screen. And to me, as the people person, makes my heart full. I love
Mhm.
seeing people play into their strengths, and they're playing to their passion too.
Mhm.
Our job is to give them the platform to do it.
Mhm. I have to say, hosting webinars is a great way to build learning
I
on
bet.
specific topic as a webinar host. The amount of concept I've learned about HR in the last year and the passion I developed for HR professional is truly impressive. So good on you for that. Mathieu, do you have examples of
Yeah, sure.
continuous learning programs? Yeah, go ahead.
And I'm happy Andrea kind of reached out in the chat saying, yeah, that's all cool, but like any suggestions on low budget, no budget kind of like ideas or solutions? I'm a big believer in start small. So starts like when you start small, it's right off the bat more affordable. And the truth of the matter is like a lot of these are just good management practices. There's different frameworks and tactics, and it's best to start small and just see all of these as experiments and not this is going to be our program. Because as an HR leader, you have different levels of assumption based on your demographic of employees, the business needs, your just internal skill set as the HR team to go one way or another. But the reality is, you are only going to learn what's going to stick with your employees as you start running those small scale experiments. Your business is already operating, which implies that there's already subject matter experts doing the job. And maybe it's just finding ways to help them get that knowledge and share it across the team to provide more depth and breadth to your team on a specific topic. So just by leveraging the internal expert, that doesn't cost a dime. You're already paying them on payroll. It's just making sure that whatever they know is easily passed down to the rest of the team. And there's different ways you can go about that. Like I already talked about, like I said, the one question, which usually I refer to as the individual contributor growth journey mapping. Like start from retirement. What are the jobs you or like the opportunities and projects you wish you can tackle before retirement. Where is our current situation sitting at in that ladder? And then you build up from that as you reverse engineer the aspirations of the employees, but the business needs and current needs and also future needs, because that conversation in some cases will extend the lifetime value or the time at your business, because you're having that conversation about future needs and that person is kind of seeing now the big picture. There's also a strategy, well, it's more of a tactic, like a delegation board. Oftentimes, like I'm the first, as a manager, as a director, I'll be the first who's happy to delegate. And there's a whole bunch of things that in my head, I'm like, I wish I would delegate that. And because I don't speak, I don't make it easy for my employees to know that, hey, those are opportunities for you to step up. I keep doing it, and I'm basically blocking them for growth opportunities. And that doesn't cost a dime at all. So if you can build a delegation board with your managers, okay, what are the things you wish an employee could take from your plate? And that in this format, your role from there is to grow that person, is to support that person. When you're doing that, you're showcasing a lot more opportunities from within your business. Your employees are aware of, okay, rather than having a singular vertical growth path, I have all of these different scenarios of growth that I can now tap to, and I can be proactive and lead that growth journey. And at the end of the day, if you really nail down this tactic, it optimizes the time of your manager, who oftentimes are the ones who are better paid, and therefore can create more value as they manage their people. So it's very simple. It could be Post-it, it could be a mirror board or whatnot. What are the things you wish you would no longer do or not be as involved in, and make sure that the people underneath you are exposed. So to them, oh, that's my, if I want to be a manager, how do I get a manager? Possibly the first step is doing something a manager does and no longer wants to do, because that's going to be like a small project for me to tackle on. Gets me into the manager reality, make me assess, oh, do I really want to become a manager, and not invest too much time in a path that sounded cool on paper, but oh, fuck, my bad. Sorry, but I didn't want to, but ends up like investing time towards a path that you end up not like enjoying the destination. So there's a lot of different tactics and frameworks you can do, but start small, please. And oftentimes lean very hard on your subject matter experts, because those people are the engine behind the business performance. And oftentimes they're both the engine, but the caretaker for new hires. Like, we're underutilizing those key people because they're accountable for the performance, but also the growth of everybody.
Mm-hmm. And when you free up time or optimize time for your managers, gives them place to grow, right? It's a virtuous circle.
Yeah.
So your managers can grow and become directors or VPs, right?
To me, the manager should drive more value through the business through others than through the work that he's doing himself. And that only comes with blocking time to make yourself available and invest time in coaching people and enabling them. Managers, to me, is an enablement job more than anything else.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually, I've written about this a couple of times. I color code all of my appointments in Google Calendar because I want to see at the end of the week. I 2 to 3 o'clock on Fridays, I have blocked off for, I call it debrief, rebrief. So I'm looking at what happened this week, and then I'm also going in and blocking off some of those times, like Mathieu said, for next week. Because, you know, whenever you get to a certain level within the company, everyone treats your calendar like a to-do list that they have access to, you know, so I like to own my calendar. But what I do is, you know, I've got something for team meetings, and, you know, if I get this Friday and I look and I've only spent 3 hours with my team, the first blocks I'm going to be doing the following week is making sure that I'm more available, or I'm extending the amount of time that I have with my team, because I agree. I'm not doing the heavy lifting. My job is to blow obstacles out of their way, keep them safe, and keep them fed. That's kind of my big three. So, you know, if you don't color code your stuff, I would encourage you. It's really interesting sometimes to get to the week and go, I'm exhausted. And then you look and you say, oh, I've had nothing but in employee relations stuff this week. No wonder I'm exhausted. You know, that doesn't give me energy. How do I prevent that going into the following week?